lately I've been doing a lot of videos that are just covering the careers of this author and that author. And I've been having a lot of fun with that. I really am. I'm doing that as a passion project. A lot of them don't get huge numbers of views, but I don't care. I love those authors and love those stories, and I want to keep going on that. And they don't get huge numbers of viewers because, frankly, I'm going back to the beginning of authors' careers, and a lot of the authors I'm covering are authors that are no longer with us, no longer writing, so they aren't being published currently, and their books aren't getting the promotion of the publishers. Even when publishers do reprint their books, like in the Science Fiction Masterworks series by Gollancz, you don't see huge splashes of advertising for these things. You just, they don't want to spend the money doing it because they don't believe they're going to get enough sales to justify the expense. And our culture today seems to be very focused on what's new and what's next, and not looking backward, not treasuring anything from the past, not valuing the past. And I'm making a generality. Of course, individuals are going to say, wait a minute, no, I read a lot of classics. Yeah, but overall, in general, we don't see a huge interest in preserving the authors of the past, or preserving their reputation. There are so many times I see YouTube videos that are just slamming science fiction classics. And in a lot of cases, I'm hearing very broad general statements about science fiction classics, which in my investigation I'm not finding to be true. I'm not saying that everybody has to read the old classic works. I'm not saying that everybody has to think that the Foundation trilogy is the greatest series ever, like was voted on back in the 1960s. Not saying that you even have to read Foundation. But I am saying if you're going to make those big blanket general statements, you need to qualify it that, first of all, how much classic science fiction have you read? How much Isaac Asimov have you read? Have you read the entire Foundation series? Things like that. Have you really deeply investigated the works of the past? And that applies not just to science fiction, but to all literature. If you're going to say anything negative about the literature of the past, you need to make sure that you have done your homework and you know what you're talking about. It's fine to just not read something because it just doesn't do anything for you. But then don't go saying that it's poorly written or no good or boring, or don't go running down those authors and their works just because it isn't your thing. Just say it isn't your thing and move on, and don't ever read it. Recently, Samantha, my friend at Bound and Tagged, she wanted me to do a buddy read, and she gave me a selection that I could choose from. And so I chose Pride and Prejudice because I've been curious about it. Everybody says how great a book that is. There are people that call it the greatest novel ever. So I wanted to read this, and so I got her to read it with me. We didn't finish it. She gave up on it because it was just so boring to her. And I want to finish it still, but I agree that it didn't hold much for me. It just wasn't engaging me. And I don't get why people think it's so wonderful, but the last thing I want to do then is run people down who really love Pride and Prejudice because they see something in it that I just don't see. And that's fine. I don't have to like Pride and Prejudice. I don't have to like Jane Austen. But I can't get up here in front of a camera and microphone and tell you that it's an awful book. because it's just not true. I mean, the history and the criticism of this book bears it out that this is a really great classic. It just isn't, so far, it just isn't doing anything for me. It's not my cup of tea. And when we first started reading Pride and Prejudice, I offered to Emily to join us in reading it. And she said, "Nah, I'll pass on this because it just doesn't hold any interest to me." And that's the right way to do it. You know, you don't have to read a book just because it's a great classic, just because lots of other people are constantly saying what a great book it is, just because there's a lot of hype, there's a lot of videos on YouTube, there's a lot of posts on Instagram or TikTok. That doesn't mean that you have any obligation to read this book ever. If you don't want, I mean, if it's assigned to you in an English class, you're kind of stuck. But on your own, as far as reading for enjoyment, which is what we're here talking about. I'm not here to do a thesis for a literature master's degree. I'm here just as a reader, plotting what I find to be fun and interesting and enjoyable. Okay, so just because everybody else is talking this book up doesn't mean that you have to like it. It doesn't obligate you to ever even have to pick it up and open it. You have no such obligation. That said, though, you can, if you haven't read it and don't have an interest in reading it, you can't then run down everything Jane Austen wrote, or everything of that period, or everything of that style, or everything that's said to be like it, because you really don't know what you're talking about. You don't have any knowledge base. It's fine for you to just say, that just doesn't interest me. It's not fine for you to say that it's crap or garbage or not great or it's overblown or any kind of words like that. But it is perfectly okay for you to make that decision to never read that book. And that's kind of how it stands with a lot of classic science fiction, that the people who are making these general statements about classic science fiction, having bad characterization, being sexist, being racist, yes, there are stories like that, but that is not all classic science fiction. There are plenty of examples that I'm running into that are the complete opposite of all those statements. The characterization may not be spectacular, but it's good enough for what the author was trying to do and the audience that the author was writing for. And, you know, I've come across two Isaac Asimov stories that are very definitely anti-racist, published in 1939 and 1940. I've come across a number of other stories that have strong female leads that were published in the science fiction magazines in the 1930s. So you can't just make those general statements that it's all the same, that all of it's bad. Just like I heard in a YouTube video somebody make the comment that all white people are racist. That's just stupid. That's the dumbest statement to come out of anybody's mouth, because it isn't true. You have to take each person on their own merits, and you have to take each story on its own merits. It leads then to where it's advantageous to explore and try different things and follow a number of different paths in your journey of discovering literature and discovering reading. It's advantageous to try a lot of things, but it still doesn't obligate you to ever read Isaac Asimov. You don't have to. There's no reason why you should feel any obligation to read Isaac Asimov, but don't run him down if you choose not to. Because there are other people that read him and really love his stuff. I mean, I read him as a kid. He was one of the first science fiction authors I started reading when I was 12 years old. and really liked his work. But then I moved on and read a lot of other stuff in the meantime. And lately I've been going back, starting at his first professional sale and reading through in order everything that he wrote. You know, and I think I'm up to number 5 or 6 now, and I'm seeing things in these stories that I didn't see when I read them as a kid. I'm discovering new aspects of the stories that I'm going back and going, I'm sitting back and going, that's cool. I didn't see it that way before. And loving the stories more than I did as a kid. And they're not even great stories. They're not even, a lot of what I'm reading so far isn't even considered classic science fiction. It's just old. You know, it was never considered to be really great. Not even at the time. But I'm still seeing things in them that are exciting me as a reader. And that's what you got to go for. And these things are exciting me. They may not excite you. You may read them and think, this is just not my thing. But don't run it down in public. Don't develop these broad general statements calling it all bad, calling it all crap, calling it all racist. It's just not the truth. Give everything a chance. Read with an open mind and explore literature. Follow your own path, but explore and follow some things that pull you off of your main path. Let yourself roam. Let yourself get lost in literature. And you'll find those things that are your thing and that do excite you. And you're going to be just going, wow, this is so cool. And unfortunately, you're not going to find anybody on YouTube that is even talking about that book. Because most people are just talking about the latest, greatest releases. Okay? The latest releases are heavily hyped. They're heavily marketed. That is on purpose because the publishers want to make money off those books. They are not publishing it as a public service. They are not publishing it with the idea of pushing art forward. They're publishing it with the idea of making money. Okay, they are businesses. They need to make money. Their employees want paychecks. Their investors want dividends. It's the way our world works. And so they only want to publish books that they feel are going to meet those marks. And when they do decide to publish a book, they are going to task their marketing department with creating a buzz and creating some excitement that will get people to buy the book. Once you buy the book, they got their money and they really don't care if you like it or not from there. A really good recent example, and kind of what got me thinking about this whole topic, is a book called The Fourth Wing, which has sold just ridiculous numbers. Lots of people are loving this book, but there's a lot of people coming on YouTube and saying, wait a minute, this is not a good book, and they're pointing out the reasons why it's not a good book. I haven't read the book, so I'm not going to pass judgment on it. I'm just stating the facts that a lot of people are really stating that this book is very bad. But the publishers, they took this book and they did what they needed to do in order to make their money, and they were successful. If it's a very poorly written book, that's not their problem. Not once they've hit their dollars, not once they've hit their projections. It's not their problem anymore. It's your problem. You decided to buy it. If you don't like it, well, give it to a friend, drop it off at the library, give it to a resale store, sell it online, whatever you want to do. But it's just not the publisher's fault. They did what they do. They took this book, they made it into something that they could sell, and this book hit all the marketing points that they knew would get people to go, oh, that sounds really cool. And once they put that into their marketing, their advertising, their promotion, got it hyped, got reviews through the NetGalley and stuff like that, once they did that, and they had people excited enough to buy the book, people were buying the book, and the publisher made their money. And you can't fault the publishers for that. That's what they exist to do. But from what I'm hearing, it's pretty clear that The Fourth Wing is not going to be any great classic. This isn't a work of art. This isn't great literature. This is just a commodity that publishers are putting out there for the purpose of making money, and they were successful. They did their job. They're going home now, leaving a lot of people very unhappy about having bought the book. Though there also seem to be a lot of other people that like the book. And that's fine. Okay, like I say, I haven't read the book. It may not be all as bad as what I'm hearing. So then, it ultimately is on the author, the individual authors out there, the writers. They're sitting down and they want to write a book. Are you going to write a book that's going to sell big, or are you going to write that book that you feel is a work of art and is true to what you really feel you should be writing? Or do you have an idea that's going to satisfy both? It's possible. But if there's going to be any great literature written today, it's on the writer to do it, not the publisher. The publisher is there to make money. They're not there to promote great literature, great art. They're there to make money. The writer is the one that's going to have to put the art into it and make it great, and care about their craft enough to write on the level of someone like Ray Bradbury or Daniel Keyes. If that writer really wants to do great literature. But a lot of writers don't. A lot of writers are just trying to make a living. They just want to sell books. And so they write what's popular. They write those stories that hit those marketing points that are going to sell the book. And the publishers love that because they have such an easy time marketing that book. It just automatically hits all the things that are going to make people stand up and take notice. We can't expect better from them. So it's on us to make those decisions. We have to, it's on the writer to write the stories. It's on us readers to make those decisions of what path are we going to take in our exploration. Do we want the really great books? Do we want the smut books? Do we want just fun adventure books? And each of us is going to choose a different answer to that question, to those questions. Some of us don't care if it's not great art. We just want, smutty romance. Not me personally, but lots of the female readers today, they really want that. So you got this romantasy genre popping up in the wake of Sarah J. Maas. And a lot of these are not that good of books, but they're selling because it's what people want. They touch on all those points that people want. And as long as the books keep delivering on those points, people are going to want them, they're going to buy them, they're going to read them. And they don't care that it's not going to be remembered 300 years from now. And it's okay if that's the kind of thing you want to read as a reader, if that's what, because end of the day, this is entertainment. It's not, it's not going to change the world. It's just going to make our lives a little more enjoyable. So we need to follow our own paths. We need to make those decisions for ourselves, and we need to follow our path and explore what we want. My friend Samantha is a really good example of somebody that she generally does read the hyped books that are coming out. And she subscribes to the Book of the Month Club and gets the latest books from there and reads them, and most of the time really loves them. But at the same time, she'll stumble across books like the one I'm going to buddy read with her as soon as we get our copies. It's a book by Nathaniel West called The Day of the Locust. I've heard of this book. I've heard of the movie. Never seen the movie, never read the book. But Nathaniel West was a pretty big deal in his day back in the 30s and 40s. He mostly wrote screenplays. There are quite a few movies that he wrote the screenplays for. But he also did write these novels, and these novels did reach bestseller status back in the 1930s. So it was a pretty big deal, but not too many people talk about him anymore. He's mostly forgotten. I don't know how Samantha came upon this book, but she did, and she said, she messaged me, this would be perfect for Telltale. And it is, because it is a lost classic that nobody's talking about anymore. But Samantha, she follows her path, her journey through discovering literature, discovering reading. Yes, she listens to people that she talks to online. If somebody makes a recommendation, she'll check it out. Yes, she follows the hype a lot of times. She's read most of the super popular books that have been published. She's a big fan of Sarah J. Maas, and she's read a number of Brandon Sanderson, and is a big fan of Sanderson now, and she reads a lot of the current hyped books. But at the same time, she does find her way to these lost books, and she's bold enough to give them a chance and see if she likes them. And in most cases, it turns out she loves them. Some cases, like I say, Pride and Prejudice was unfortunate. It wasn't her thing. She just wasn't liking it. So that's why I'm always saying in our videos that this is a personal journey, and we have to find our own path. And when you're taking your own path and finding your own path, be true to yourself, but don't run down the guy next to you that's reading something that you think is total garbage. Because they're loving it, and there's a reason why they're loving it. They have a different perspective. They have different likes and dislikes from you, and it's okay. I mean, you wouldn't run down somebody who's eating a plate of spaghetti and you won't touch spaghetti. You gotta have lasagna. You're not gonna sit there and run somebody down that's enjoying their plate of spaghetti with meatballs. That's ridiculous. Why do it with literature? Let that person like what they like, even if it is technically garbage. And there's a lot of people right now that, during the month of August have been participating in something called Garb August. And they're reading these trashy pulp style books. He-Man adventure stories and smutty romance stories and paperbacks from hell and all these old things that are mostly forgotten because they're just not that good of books. But they still do have an audience. They still do have people who pick it up and they enjoy it, even though they know they're not reading something that's a great classic, even though they're not reading something that's going to be in my top tales list. They don't care. They're enjoying it. And give them that. Let them have that. Let them enjoy what they really like, and let them participate in stuff like that. As long as they don't come along and you're reading something by, I don't know, a contemporary author that's very highly literate and kind of stuffy and taught in university literature classes, and you're reading it and enjoying it, they can't then come along after reading their garbage books and say, wow, that stuff is just too stuffy, it's too boring, that's horrible, I wouldn't, you shouldn't read stuff like that, that's no fun. They shouldn't do that to you. And you reading your high literature, your classics and your great contemporary novels, your Pulitzer Prize winners, your Nobel winners, you shouldn't look down on the people that are reading those trashy executioner series books, and belittle what they're reading, because they're enjoying it just as much as you're enjoying your book. And like I say, everybody has to take their own journey. Everybody has to go down their own road. Hopefully it'll get them to some place really great. But that place is going to be different for everybody. But the final analysis here is that you, if you just look at top 100 classics, the 1,000 books you must read before you die, or the top 10 smutty fantasy books, if you just look at those kinds of things, or just watch YouTube and follow the videos that talk about these are the most anticipated books coming out this month, and you only read that, you're missing out on a lot of other stuff. I mean, it's fine if you want to read that stuff, but always remember that that you're just seeing the tip of the iceberg, and there's so much more out there that you could be experiencing if you allow yourself to take a little different path once in a while and explore. Don't be afraid to explore. Don't be afraid to go out of your comfort zone. Don't be afraid to try something that's not being talked about on YouTube. Don't be afraid to come to Telltale Books and try one of the stuff that we're talking about, because most of what we talk about is stuff that nobody else is talking about. That's kind of our whole point. But don't feel like you're obligated to read a book just because I or somebody else says this is really great and you should probably try it. What you should probably do is follow your own path and don't let other people tell you